Hello YouTube, this is Ray, and we need to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 on the Mac, and if it's the best way to play if you do not have a PC. Let's talk about it. So Baldur's Gate 3 is finally out on the Mac, and I've been fiddling around with the settings and trying to understand how to get the best FPS and what you want to really get out of playing Baldur's Gate 3 on a Mac. Now, I'm coming from a perspective where I have the PS5 version. I have played the streaming GeForce NOW version, and now I want to see if I can play this directly on my Mac without any hassle. And the goal is really to just outperform the PlayStation, in my opinion. So there's a few things you need to know about how the PlayStation works in order to really maximize the best way to play on a Mac, because I'll tell you right now, you will not beat PC performance, because let's be honest, Macs were not made for gaming, and that's okay. So one of the first few things you actually need to know about the PlayStation version is this game does not have many video graphics settings beyond performance and quality mode. That's pretty standard for PlayStation. You don't really get to play around with the settings because they want to make sure that every game is optimized to play. Now, I actually have been playing on performance mode for my PlayStation portion of this playthrough, but I actually really don't care about frame rates as much for a game like this because it's not really fast paced. If I continue playing on the PlayStation, it will most likely be quality mode. And as far as how this is portrayed on YouTube, I already only do 30 FPS videos, so you won't see a difference at all. But going into how the quality and video settings work for PlayStation, it says that performance mode is basically targeting 60 FPS by any means necessary. So it's going to slightly lower quality dynamically in order to get the best results. The most common thing that it does is FSR. So I think the first thing to understand about comparing the PlayStation to running it natively on a Mac is on PlayStation, the max resolution is 1440p for quality mode and performance mode. 1440p is actually really only being hit in quality mode for the most part, and in performance mode, 1440p, the resolution for is actually upscaled from rendering from a smaller resolution of the game being rendered. So in order to do a proper comparison, what I'm gonna do to make an apples to apples comparison is try to get this game running on 1440p and see what the quality looks like on the Mac. But what I've also been researching, it's running all of the quality settings on Ultra, and I think that's perfectly fine. So let's try to run 1440p on the Mac and see what kind of frames we get. Mind you, I'm using an M1 Max because of work and creativity and all these things that I have to do. So if you have a different version of the M1 or the M2, the performance may vary. So for the sake of testing, I put on the Metal Hud so I can see the frames per second, since it doesn't necessarily work from the Steam by default on the Macs. So this is actually a great way to kind of understand what frames per second that you're actually getting if a game is running under Metal on a Mac. So by default, this is actually what the game looks like. It actually looks amazing compared to the PlayStation, but we are only getting 26 frames per second, and that's because right now I believe it has everything set to Ultra. It has the highest resolution. There's no FSR, upscaling. Yeah, everything is by default, at least for me, set on Ultra because I'm on an M1 Max. I'm going to set this to 1440p and keep everything else the same and see what kind of frames we get. That's a good start. So with the resolution set to 1440p, as you can see, I'm receiving 46 to 47 frames per second, meaning that we can pretty much match quality mode on the PlayStation 5. Or if we probably upscale the new FSR, we could probably get to 60 frames per second. The first thing I actually want to do is walk around this. I'm just at camp. I'm going to walk around the camp just a little bit just to see if the frame dips or anything. I do know that they actually dip up quite a bit when you actually talk to characters. So let's go check that out. And I see more characters on screen equals frames dropping down to 37, 38.
Quite the cozy setup you have here. I'll just make myself comfortable. Thank you so much.
And it seems like we got down to almost 29. I know it says 14 over there, but that's based off a singular frame drop, which actually is important. But for the most part, it stayed at a 29. So we can pretty much match quality mode. There is one big caveat though. This is only Act 1. I have not got that far in this game. I do know that Act 3 is the biggest bottleneck in this game. So I'm not sure if the M1 Max can even run this very well if we get to Act 3. But this is also a universal issue with Baldur's Gate 3, so it doesn't matter if you have a PlayStation 5 or the Mac version, this is probably going to be a default issue. I'm pretty sure it's also an issue on PC as well, unless you have an extremely strong graphic card. I will say that this game does look a lot better in my opinion on the Mac, but as you can see, the dog is stuttering, and I've noticed a few things like that where there's just a whole bunch of just small jank happening all over the game to the point where it makes me question if I should play the Mac version. Like, look at this. What is this? What is happening? Scratch. What is wrong with you, buddy? So please note this is only just to match the PlayStation 5. But personally, if I wanted to just match the PlayStation 5, I would just play this on the PlayStation 5. I want an actual fidelity improvement. So what I would want is a higher resolution and hopefully stick to 30 frames per second at minimum, so I can get better fidelity in the game. You do have to play around with the settings quite a bit in order to accomplish that. I've kind of have an understanding of what to do for this computer, so let's go do that now. First thing I want to do is set the resolution to 1800. It makes the game look a lot sharper at the cost of the frames per second. Actually, if we're gonna do FSR, we might as well scale all the way to our original resolution. Yes, the game looks sharp and great, but we're back to the frame rate problem. Ultra quality brings us up to 36. Quality brings us to 43. Balance brings it to 49. Performance brings it to 55, 56. Interesting. So since I am going to try to target a higher resolution, I have to consider the fact that I'm going to have to lose quality in some way, shape, or form. So the first thing I would do is probably just check out how the game looks for each FSR setting. So let's go check that out now. This does look quite blurry in my opinion. Let's try balanced. Still a bit blurry, but I think this actually matches more the resolution of the PlayStation 5. So balanced actually might be good. And we're still at the 4950 range. Mind you, this is just based off this current location. I should probably do this over here, 42, 43. That means these quality things is actually gonna drop quite a bit. Okay, 38, 37. Now this actually looks really good. My only issue is that I'm not sure how sustainable this would be. Scratch still tripping over here, but this looks really good. I'm just curious. Let's just talk to Volo again, see how much that drops. 29 to 28. See, that's concerning. Kind of tells me that ultra quality is not in the cards at this resolution. Looks amazing, but we're already at 31 frames per second, and that's unfortunate. So at least for me, the choices are either I go down in resolution, up the quality of the SFR, or I drop the SFR quality and keep the resolution. Those are the two things you're really going to have to play with. Other than those two things that you really have to just monitor and play with, there are some settings here in the quality section that can be sacrificed. Shadow is probably one of the biggest things that increases your FPS. So putting that to medium is probably a good move. The same thing with font quality is not really that necessary. You could probably just go to quarter. At least visually, I cannot tell too much of the difference. And I like to keep pretty much everything else intact. And that's mainly because I'm using an M1 Max. If you can also tell, there's actual streaks on the ground. And I think that's a rendering issue. And that's been apparent for all settings on the Mac. So I don't know if that's something they need to adjust, but there is some rendering issues with at least the skin of the floor. Like zoom in, you can see the streaks. This also applies to clothes. After a certain point, your clothes starts to move weird. Like look, I don't need you to look at my booty, but look at this man's booty. See this weird booty bounce? What does balance work on? Let's talk to Volo on balanced. And you'll also notice that there's a lot of stuttering happening. That's actually screen tearing that's happening because the frames per second when you're talking, if you could see the graph, the GPU portion is going up and down really fast. It's really trying to render this out, and there's something happening while speaking to NPCs that causes all of that stuttering, which also makes sense why the frame rates actually drop during talk scenes. The best way to actually alleviate that is make sure you have your frame per second currently at a state where it's going to be well above your target, and then you cap your frame rate. For me, I don't care. I'm cool with 30 frames per second. This way your computer doesn't have to work as hard. It uses all of that energy to try to render out other things that it was messing up. And if you noticed, my booty butt cheeks is fine now in the game.
My good fellow. Quite the cozy setup you have here.
Nope, there's still screen tear. Unfortunately, there's still a bit of screen tearing, and there has to be a reason for it. I am unsure, but I think playing on the Mac, I'll probably play on the Mac probably for an episode or two just to see, but there's a good chance that I will probably not play on the Mac. And if you wanted my first thought on if it's better to play on the Mac or on the PlayStation, unfortunately, I might have to pick the PlayStation. But there is one caveat though. I think the best way to get the best quality and the best frame rates and the best visual fidelity, if you have a really good internet connection, is using a streaming service like GeForce NOW. Mind you, this is not a sponsored video. They don't know anything about me, but I've played this game on GeForce NOW first, and I'm actually considering going back. The only reason why I stopped is there was some annoying audio issues, and that's because I was streaming while trying to record a Let's Play, and I think I have to fix my own settings. But the game itself was actually running beautifully on GeForce NOW. Actually, look, let's go take a look at that. All right, so we made it to the GeForce NOW version. As you can see, it's holding up at 60 frames per second. I have this set to max at 60 frames per second, and it looks pretty okay right now, but I think that's mainly because of the settings. Let's go. Interesting that they have the frame rate cap on by default, but that makes sense. Oh, they have the DLSS set to performance mode. Let's just turn this off. Let's get the actual native version of this. It looks like this. It looks okay. I think there needs to be some anti-aliasing for me personally. Oh, they have DLA. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, GeForce NOW. And honestly, this looks absolutely amazing. See if there's any other settings. So this is with zero upscaling at all at a native 2160. Wonder what the frame rate goes to if you have all of this. I guess it doesn't make a difference.
Ah, my good fellow. Quite the cozy setup you have here. I'll just make myself comfortable. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this looks absolutely amazing. And I think what that has taught me is things we kind of already know. MacBooks, while they're great, they're not made for gaming, and that's okay. They have purposes that are beyond gaming, and that's been their target demo, and they're just getting into gaming. So if you want to play this on a Mac, it's cool. I think it's probably, if you're going to put them in order, I think it's probably the worst option. Then I would put PS5 just right above it. And while it doesn't have probably the fidelity you would want, at the end of the day, it's a dedicated gaming machine and it's just going to work. It's one of those things where it just works. But if you're someone that really wants the high quality, high fidelity, and you have good internet connection, I actually think the best way to play this is through GeForce NOW, and it just looks good. So if you do not have a dedicated gaming PC and you don't even want to go down that route, GeForce NOW is probably the best way to play. And that's all I pretty much have for this video. I'm going to get back to my Let's Play. I'm going to probably still play on the Mac at least one time, just to see how the frame rates just varied throughout my gameplay. But most likely, I will probably get back on GeForce Now to finish off my gameplay. But anyway, thank you for watching. If this was informative to you, please make sure to drop a like, follow, subscribe, and check out my Let's Play. I'm there having fun trying to figure out this game, and we'll see where the story takes us. And thank you very much. See you.